In this video, we're going to see how to register groups of services with extension methods. In our example here, we have a group of related services. We can put this group in a single addGroupName extension method, and inside that method, we can register both these services. So let's do just that. Right-click our Blazor web application project and select Add New Folder. Name the folder Extensions. Right-click the Extensions folder and select Add Class and name the class Simple Book Catalog Service Collection Extensions and click Add. Now, extension methods should live in a public static class. So let's turn this into a static class, and then inside the class, create a public static method that returns an iService collection, and we can name the method, say, AddApplicationServices. Now we are creating an extension method on the iService collection type. So we need to use the this modifier and then specify our type, which is iService collection, and let's call the parameter services. Inside this method, we need to register both the services. So let's go to our program class, cut these lines and paste them here. We can now modify these lines to use the services parameter instead of builder.services. And finally, to allow chaining, we can use the return statement and return services. Now back to the program class, we can call our extension method like so. Builder.services.addApplicationServices and make sure to bring in the namespace. Now Microsoft itself uses this convention to register a group of related services required by a framework feature. For example, if we want to use a framework feature such as support for server-side rendering of Razor components, we don't have to individually register services. Instead, we can use the AddRazorComponents extension method provided by the ASP.NET Core framework, and that method takes care of all of those registrations for us. Finally, let's talk about one more extension method provided by the framework, the AddDbContext method. Now let's go to our simple book catalog DbContext class in our data access project, and let's talk about an issue here. We have used the useSQLServer method inside the onConfiguring method. This means that we have configured our data access project to use the SQL Server database provider, and that configuration is present right inside our simple book catalog DbContext class itself. So with this design, it's not possible to configure our data access project to use a different database provider from outside this class, like in the composition route. So how can we improve this? First, let me modify this code and then explain what it does. First, let's get rid of the onConfiguring method, and instead of using a connection string as a parameter to the constructor, let's inject a DbContext options of simple book catalog DbContext and call it options, and pass this to the base class constructor as well. Now let's go back to the program class, and instead of the simple book catalog DbContext service registration here, we can use the AddDbContext extension method. But first, let's copy this connection string and get rid of these lines. Now we can call builder.services.addDbContext of simple book catalog DbContext. Now this method internally registers the simple book catalog DbContext class as a scoped service, and it registers a few others as well. And as a parameter to the method, we can pass in a lambda expression that takes in an options builder. We can create a block and say options.useSQLServer, and let's paste in the connection string that we copied earlier. Now let's understand how this works. The book repository class accepts a simple book catalog DbContext as a constructor parameter. At runtime, when the book repository class is instantiated, an instance of simple book catalog DbContext needs to be passed to its constructor. As I said earlier, the AddDbContext of simple book catalog DbContext registers it as a scoped service, so this is fine. But our context class itself accepts a DbContext options as a constructor parameter. So how will an instance of DbContext options be passed to our context class? Well, the AddDbContext extension method internally invokes the Lambda function passed to it whenever an instance of DbContext options is needed. So this will create a DbContext options builder object, and finally the options property is invoked on it, which will then return an instance of DbContext options that is then passed to our context class constructor. So this way, the AddDbContext extension method lets us configure both the database provider and connection string from within the composition root itself rather than putting it directly in our context class. In the next video, we're going to talk about registering multiple implementations of the same service type.